What is up, everybody? Solomon here. Super excited to be with Genfinity, interviewing multiple builders across Web3. Super excited today to have Intrana. We'll be talking about real-world asset tokenization, Constellation Network, some aspects of Quant and secure asset transfer protocol. That being said, let's get the ball rolling. Well, welcome, Court. Super excited to have you today. Always like to kick these off a little bit with an introduction of the individual. So, Court, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what brought you into Web3 and what brought you into Intrana, that'd be fantastic.
Hi, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is Court Welty. I'm the founder and president of Intrana. What brought me to Web3 was really just from my traditional finance background, seeing some of the ways that this technology could be applied into the things that we already do, either in the real estate market, compliance for securities transfers, and then the way that transfers of securities and other commodities work themselves. So I thought it was a really engaging way for us to kind of bring some of the old into the new, and be less about meme tokens and more about real world assets and things that actually matter and have substantial volume behind them.
That's fantastic. And if you could maybe just give us a little bit of an overview of Intrana before we dig deeper into the weeds here. What is Intrana? What are you guys kind of tackling as far as the Web3 stance is concerned? I know it's kind of the intersection of traditional and digital. So love to hear it from you.
Yeah, absolutely. So Intrana is a consumer and enterprise chain agnostic platform that is going to allow individuals, regardless of network choice or fiats that they use, cryptocurrencies to an extent, to engage with tokenized real world assets as well as proof of authentication or ownership tokens in a way that is focused on self-custody, compliance, and proper anti-money laundering controls. The reason we think that's so important is currently it's kind of the Wild West of crypto. And we worked with Quant Network to create the architecture for our platform, and we have a Metagraph from Constellation Network that we will be reflecting all of our chain agnostic activity to, such that we can analyze that data, provide some AI analytics and risk assessment, as well as stress testing for future financial protocols. And we have some really good work that we're doing here at the National Digi Foundry out of the University of Texas at San Antonio. And we're very happy about that. And we'll just see how this goes with the launch of our protocol coming very soon. We'll initially just focus on consumer products as well as a couple financial applications and products. We'll then get into the weeds of providing some more advanced treasury products, for instance, as well as REITs, commodities, digital bills of lading, letters of credit, etc.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I know it's always interesting to me because in Web3 we always hear like catchphrases. Or these ideal use cases for the technology, but we don't necessarily see them being built or in operation right now. Whether it's interoperability is obviously a big phrase that we always hear about. And I certainly agree that we're going to get there at some point in time, but I do not believe that we're anywhere close to what that's going to look like. Same thing with programmability. Why did you guys choose to, I guess this maybe gets into a little bit about Quant and the underlying infrastructure, secure asset transfer protocol. What does that represent from a user choice standpoint, from an agnostic standpoint, from a bridging standpoint? Can you maybe just walk us through the decision-making process to integrate SATP into Intrana?
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason SATP is so important and most people kind of overlook it is that currently the way that bridges occur is not safe. It's the whole point, the secure asset transfer protocol. And Martin Hargreaves, as well as Thomas Harjano out of MIT, created this paper, and they've actually put a proposal to have this adoption expedited. So hopefully we'll see that very soon. But the whole premise behind SATP in general is to own, or at least do business with, the people that own the gateways on both networks. The reason this is so important is that it allows us to simultaneously mint and burn assets, such that we can control assets from one unified smart contract on the back end. And it doesn't have to be, let's say, smart contract based. It also works with Scala-based chains, et cetera. And from this, we really take away some attack vectors that currently exist in the market. Because when we escrow funds, currently a lot of bridges, the way that they work, they create another form, a copy of that token. So there's a risk of those escrowed funds being hacked, drained, improper use from people that have authority to access those escrows. And we feel that that is an unnecessary risk that is part of the current architecture that SATP actually solves. And in a way, it allows us to provide chain agnostic activity that would be respected by all chains, because they know that that asset only exists on one network at a singular time. And it allows us to ensure that enterprises that join us do not have that risk of those escrowed funds being attacked.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's interesting too when we talk about, and I know you'll dig a little bit deeper into the weeds with this with us here, but with the tokenization of real world assets, that there are multiple different. It's not just going to be crypto or digital assets. Actually, that's the entire point, is that it's not just going to be crypto or digital assets. It's all of the real world assets that kind of exist within these markets right now being tokenized, coming on chain in a way that defragments things and increases liquidity and all the other aspects. I think when you start putting that under the purview of something like secure asset transfer protocol and moving these tokenized forms of real world assets between chains and things like that, I mean, what's your opinion as far as how early we are in this space regarding tokenization, and how do you envision tokenization kind of just changing the world over time, and how does SATP play a role in kind of all of that, I guess?
So the reason that we chose Quant, and to go back, this kind of answers it. They have multiple bridges that they've already created. InBridge is coming soon, and with it, ISO 222 will be adopted by all banks by 2025. It's just a messaging standard, but it has quantum computing encryption frameworks built into it, such that it is ready for adoption for all financial institutions and businesses, so that that information, that primitive data, can be respected across different protocols. So SATP kind of turns all of this from individual pieces into a puzzle that connects together. And in that way, it doesn't matter what a business has chosen already, because there's many VCs, large enterprises, and government organizations that essentially siloed themselves into networks. What we see in Intrana, SATP, Quant, Constellation, the amalgamation of us all working together doing, is being able to mesh these networks together in a way that is unified underneath a standard. And through that, all these organizations can plug into it in a modular way. It also kind of levels a playing field for smaller businesses, folks that are entrepreneurs, because a lot of these smaller businesses don't have development companies where they can go and spend $1 million connecting to distributed ledger technology, getting blockchain developers and engineers, architects to understand the new ways the data is being hosted and transferred. It's a lot. And so what we want to do is be able to provide people a very easy way to find the niche that they're trying to target, whether it's a use case or a specific audience, and then find modular systems that are applicable using these new technologies that are chain agnostic to really connect to the marketplace, either primary or secondary, that allows folks to get volume. And this can be applied to a multitude of different types of industries, from insurance to securities, commodities, real estate. Agriculture is a huge one. And there's a lot of ways that we can actually start sponsoring with liquidity pools and providing volume and liquidity to these smaller farmers in disparate ecosystems that otherwise would not be able to grow food. It really can help start solving food deserts and creating decentralized ways for us to tackle supply chain logistics, especially. And all of this comes from tokenizing assets and underneath a protocol that would allow people to transfer it anywhere at any time in a self-custodied manner.
And as far as Constellation and the Metagraph aspects are concerned, I know that from the Genfinity purview, we've worked with the Constellation guys for a while now, but it's always interesting to me that when you start seeing things converge, like even myself trying to think about so many different ecosystems and learn as much as possible, like sometimes it takes a while until like a light bulb moment hits in my head, as far as like, what does a Metagraph actually like? What does it represent for traditional business coming into Web3? I kind of had that light bulb moment a couple of weeks ago. Obviously not like financial advice. This isn't about speculation or anything, just from the tech standpoint. I really think it's cool, like having the ability to kind of bring in custom code bases and current code logic into a Metagraph, but also kind of having an underlying infrastructure of like blockchain or DLT that kind of plugs and plays on top of that kind of that code base that a lot of these, well, all of these traditional institutions have. I'm curious from your standpoint, from Intrana's standpoint, what led you to Constellation? What led you to building out, a Metagraph right now, an integration net, I'm assuming, on mainnet at some point, but Yeah, tell us the story a little bit and what Constellation Network kind of offers from the Metagraph purview.
Absolutely. So we initially had them on a list of dream partners, dream networks, or collaborators that we could work with. And we were lucky enough, after I reached out to Altif months later, to be reached out by him to us. And it was a surprise, but something that we jumped on. And they allowed us to get a Metagraph spun up, and we really started working with their developers on the back end. Shout out to Marcus and Zhao. I love those guys, and Al as well. We've really kind of come to understand what you have is that metagraphs are a modular solution for businesses that need a secure network for information sharing. And that's every business that exists in the entire world. It makes it a very easy way for people to come in and use other tools that companies have made or what Constellation has made and plug that in using their existing data sets and code bases, so they don't have to do a complete rework. It respects primitive data in a way that other chains don't. Because in my opinion, smart contracts are kind of stupid. There's a lot of things that you can't really do with them. And from the Constellation standpoint, the Metagraph standpoint, it really is much more open, much more flexible. It's a little more complex. There's a lot more elbow grease that you got to put into it. But at the same time, it does provide you to be a lot more creative with the business solutions. And as we start to see more modular functionalities emerge from the ecosystem itself, we're going to really see a lot of cool things that people can just plug and play at will for businesses. And I mean, when it comes to what Constellation has already done, the partnerships that they have that currently exist, there's not another company working inside of distributed ledger technology besides maybe Quant that is working with such large institutions with the respect and the power that they demand. The US government being one of those. And having people on board that are able to help and encrypt satellites and really are at the forward edge of that, pun intended with forward edge AI. We are really looking at Constellation being a powerhouse for the next, couple decades, if not centuries, because of what they're doing. I would anticipate at a certain point HTTP being a mandated technology because we will need to have quantum computing resistance as well as other types of encryption for the American databases that exist, because it's of the utmost importance for national security for us to make sure that this information is not shared in a way that it should not be. And that goes down to who owns this piece of land, who owns this car, who am I? How does the government identify me? If those databases are hacked, if that information gets leaked, if GPSs get spoofed en masse, we're looking at a mass catastrophe. So Constellation is really playing a huge role in making sure that we're protected, and their technology can't be replaced right now, and I don't think it will be.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned forward edge AI, and I would love if you could maybe just tell us a little bit. I know within NDF, and I guess to preface, NDF is National Digi Foundry, obviously a grant recipient from the National Science Foundation. For those that don't know, there are a lot of different entities, Fortune 500 companies, notably Department of the Treasury, Space Force, IBM, and obviously forward edge AI and all the great work that Kevin is doing over there. But from your standpoint, you're kind of in the weeds with this financial product tokenization group. I should preface, it's really cool to think about like the Department of the Treasury and Space Force and these entities like messing around with a Stargazer wallet. like that's always really interesting to me. And I'm sure it's very interesting to you, kind of being greasing the wheels of this financial product tokenization working group there. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us about some of the interaction that you have there. Maybe just paint the picture for us, because I think it's really cool. And congrats, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we were lucky enough to win that work group competition. So I don't know how many people joined it. It might have just been because we were there at the right time. But that being said, we are taking the most and really trying to make the most out of this opportunity because we have a lot of really cool people that have joined so far, at least showed up to the first meeting. NASA, the NSF, a couple people from Forward Edge AI, etc. But what we're doing is really trying to make a way for us to, like I mentioned, create a modular architecture for this tokenization of financial products that keeps and respects compliance, regulation, as well as sustainability. Right now, we have a financial architecture that we're using across America, from our markets to the way that we handle money and distribute it, that isn't necessarily working as well as I think that we may be intended. And that's nobody's fault. It's just growing pains of a country. And as technology evolves, we do have to find new ways for us to kind of exhibit value and represent it. And so one of the cool things that we're doing is creating a way for us to actually have true value on distributed ledger technology using the US dollar and treasury products, so that we can actually start to base true value on distributed ledger technology with something that is from the treasury and that is not for profit. We do believe that anybody that's creating a stable coin, for profit, is inherently unstable, because that profit mechanism, is potentially corruptible, right? And so we think it's imperative for us to not only make an architecture that is immediately adoptable and works, but also has really good studies and analysis of those functionalities in mass. And Forward Edge AI, a lot of the members of the National Digi Foundry are really going to help out with that inside of different subcommittees that we've created. And those subcommittees go all the way from just financial and risk analysis to being able to actually implement AI systems on this activity, so that we can make sure that we identify any breaches in compliance, as well as make sure that the tokenized assets do not even exist on chain if they weren't created in a compliant manner.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I know your guys' roadmap is pretty far out, as far as, a lot of the different initiatives kind of going live. Maybe just walk us through where you guys are at now, and throughout the rest of the year, as far as what you guys have in the pipeline. That'd be great.
Yeah. So we are finishing up our ICO. We have 17 days left. It ends on May 23rd, I believe, at 5 a.m. Central. It might be 6 a.m. Don't quote me on that. But we are ending that, and then we will get into the platform testing. So we have Chupacabras. Those are the NFT collections. You actually get physical products if you purchase 1,000 more INT. And those folks are going to be able to actually test our platform early. We'll have some missions that people can go and do to make sure that we have proper and ample testing done with a good test size and subject size. So we're going to let everybody go and actually see what the platform can do. It's initially local to Constellation Metagraph, just so that we can make sure that all the functionalities work properly inside of Integration Net. Then once everything's proper, it's audited, and we'll get it pushed to mainnet, and then we'll start to activate some of the chain agnostic functionalities and include more financial products. From that, we are looking to, on our phase 2, we have some phases that we're going through right now. And phase 2, we have a wonderful artist tour. So because we do also have consumer products, we have Chantel Lane. She wrote for Rihanna, Grammy nominated. She won a ton of awards, T-shirt, Impossible. Luckily, I was actually able to personally write an album for her, and because I was a musician before I started all this, and she's going to be performing that. We're going to be doing it across the southern and eastern U.S., and we have some other signed artists. Hardistry, Joe Nix will be coming as well. I have one that I wrote, and I have a couple songs that we'll be performing, and it's really just bringing that collectible side back to what distributed ledger technology, I believe, should be. So we'll have, one, bespoke vinyls. We record direct to vinyl. The NFTs will just be proof of ownership, access to back-end file libraries, videos of the tour, backstage passes, things like that. So we're really looking forward to that. Meeting with Chantel this week for kind of the finalization of those dates and everything. And we're just looking forward to really bringing on more businesses as well. Inside of this year, it's nothing, one, without community, but two, without us providing this wonderful technology to businesses that can use it. We're really looking forward to entering fleet management and agriculture, as well as all of the financial products that I mentioned initially. But we do have some cool builds for that and modular solutions that they'll be able to use specifically for cattle, and livestock, just making sure they've been vaccinated, going down hereditary chains, and because there's a lot of lying going on right now. So you can really start to tokenize all that. Really looking forward to that, bringing on more businesses that can really use it, getting in the hands of blue collar workers where they don't necessarily know how it's working, but that it works for them and that it's more efficient than what they've already been using. And when we start doing that, that word of mouth is going to spread like wildfire. So we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, kind of from the musician aspect, and then full blown into Web3, obviously, too. I would love if you could maybe just tell us your thoughts on where digitization is going in the future as far as tokenization of real world assets, just big picture wise, to kind of lead us out here. What's your kind of vision as far as where this stuff might be going? I know that we can't predict the future, but it feels like the writing's kind of on the wall with a lot of this technology actually kind of which is crazy because if you would have asked me that same question 5 or 6 years ago, as I was doing all this deep diving and finding documents and stuff, I'm like, most of the stuff's real, but like now it's almost like we've been desensitized. I mean, there's tokenized BlackRock funds and there's X, Y, and Z. Like, where do you think this is all going in the long term here?
I've had this conversation with quite a few people, and they don't necessarily agree with me. But in my opinion, I think that we are seeing the revolution and the greatest transformation of wealth that has existed in humanity. At least, since our inception or since we can remember. This technology is going to level the playing field and really take power out of the hands from people who control things that shouldn't. Those that help and control and influence by merit obviously will have their place, like governments and social service workers, things of that nature. But banks, insurance companies, brokerages to an extent. There's a lot of huge conglomerates that could be considered monopolies that do things that are a little outdated. We don't necessarily need someone holding all of our money anymore for us to be able to access credit. And we're starting to see some of the downsides of that with insolvency of banks, some of the repeating patterns that kind of predecessed the Great Depression back in the 20s. And, from a financial standpoint, I think that it is going to be, the last time that we really have to struggle for individual power inside of financial markets. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that shift back into the hands of the people that participate in the markets as opposed to the people that help run them. And I think that's a very good thing. And I think that eventually, we're going to see banks no longer exist in the ways that we see them. There'll be more liquidity providers. As opposed to custodians. I think custodianship to an extent will disappear.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Court. We really appreciate your time today again. Guys, check out Intrana, what these guys are building. They're leveraging, obviously, technology from Quant Network and SATP, as well as Constellation Network and the Metagraph aspects, working with national Digi, Foundry, and financial product tokenization with organizations such as, NASA and Treasury and all these different aspects. It's really cool. We really appreciate your time and looking forward to the next time that we meet and seeing some of the aspects going live on mainnet with Constellation as well, Court. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. Talk soon.